Remember back in 2010 when Republicans were trying to win the House? Here is how they ran that entire campaign.
California has Nancy Pelosi.
She voted with Nancy Pelosi 91% of the time.
Ben Chandler, Pelosi's lapdog.
Isn't one Nancy Pelosi enough?
So one wonders why Republicans, knowing that abortion is a losing issue for them, would make Mike Johnson of Louisiana the face of the party as Speaker of the House. As recently as January, Johnson tweeted, quote, "We will get the number of abortions to zero, exclamation point, in Louisiana because of the fall of Roe v. Wade. Thanks be to God." We've talked about his role in trying to help Donald Trump overturn the election, but his history is far more troubling than just that. As David Rothkopf points out, Johnson is more dangerous than Donald Trump because Johnson actually wants to make America into a Christian theocracy. His extreme views have been on open display for decades. As early as 2003, he was writing anti-LGBTQ editorials back home. In 2004, he defended Louisiana's proposed statewide ban on same-sex marriage, writing that homosexual relationships are inherently unnatural and a dangerous lifestyle, and that allowing same-sex marriage would lead to people marrying their pets. Their pets! And his path to Republican politics began as senior attorney for a group dedicated to destroying LGBTQ plus protections and outlawing abortion, now known as the Alliance Defending Freedom, the group that's trying to ban the abortion pill mifepristone and who represented a Colorado baker who refused to make a cake for a gay couple and a web designer who refused to make a hypothetical wedding site for a gay couple that didn't exist. It's no wonder a spokesperson for the Human Rights Campaign told NBC News that Johnson is Jim Jordan with a jacket and a smile. Just listen.
The radical sort of homosexual agenda of the country wants judges to decide this issue and not the people.
You know, we don't live in a democracy because a democracy is two wolves and a lamb deciding what's for dinner, okay? It's not just majority rule. It's a constitutional republic. And the founders set that up because they followed the biblical admonition on what a civil society is supposed to look like.
Certainly, there's a move to keep religion out of politics and to rigidly enforce the so-called separation of church and state. Many of us have been working for this day our entire adult lives, and it is a great, joyous occasion.
Roe v. Wade gave constitutional cover to the elective killing of unborn children in America, period. You think about the implications of that on the economy. We're all struggling here to cover the bases of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all the rest. If we had all those able-bodied workers in the economy, we wouldn't be going upside down and toppling over like this.
Joining me now is Zorin Carmon, senior correspondent for New York Magazine, and Judd Legum, author of the popular information newsletter, to which I subscribe. Judd, I do want to go to you first here at the table. He said the quiet part out loud there. He says, make them give birth so we can have more low-wage workers right here in the USA. Weird that he'd say that in his outside voice. Also weird that Republicans would say that guy ought to be, you know, the person who's going to be their avatar going into the next election. Give us more background because you know more.
Yeah, well, if you look at his career, all the way from when he graduated law school in 1998, he has really been dedicated to using the government to, first as a lawyer, then as a state legislature, then as a member of Congress, now as Speaker of the House,
right,
to impose his own religious views using the power of government on others, whether they agree with it or not.
Yeah.
And that's been very consistent. You know, one of his first big cases, first big advocacy positions that he came out with that you can read about in the old archives of the papers,
yeah,
where he was advocating for a class to be taught in public schools that would treat the Bible as a literal truth, as a history book, and teach children that these are things that actually occurred.
Right.
And what was interesting about that was not only did people who were interested about the separation of church and state raise some alarms, but actually a lot of religious people said, well, wait a second, I'm a Catholic.
Right.
This course does not meet what I believe either.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be teaching children this as well because it had a very particular point of view. So
yeah,
I think it really shows you what his priorities are and how he will be guiding the House. And I think from abortion, but also on a whole host of other issues, those are going to be his priorities, doing whatever he can in this position. And he can do quite a bit now,
sure,
because he's Speaker of the House, to enforce those views on everyone.
On everyone else. Irin, you interviewed Mike Johnson, and I remember the series that you did back in 2015. I remember it very well. I think I had you on my Dayside Show to talk about it and played clips of it. But you interviewed him as part of that series, which was on people who were vigorously, religious folks who were extremely anti-abortion. Talk about what he told you, because he tied abortion to school shootings, I believe.
That is correct. Very explicitly. You know, Joy, I went to Bossier City, Louisiana to meet with him because I was looking for somebody who was really at the core of the conservative legal movement. Because as Judd mentioned, he's someone who used the law and then government. He had just been elected to the state legislature to advance the views that we're seeing already being put into practice. Really the script used to overturn Roe v. Wade, to undermine the rights of same-sex couples. And they hope to do a lot more, including overturning Obergefell, the Supreme Court decision that allowed for same-sex marriage to be the law throughout the land. So I sat down with him. He had, this Ned Flanders vibe that seems to be the main reason that he got unanimous support. I mean, it's truly baffling to me that people had to Google him. Senators had to Google him. To me, it was very clear that he was, despite that Ned Flanders vibe, a fire-breathing conservative, part of a movement that was once a fringe part of the Republican coalition. It was always part of that coalition dating back about 51 years. But is now rapidly moving into the center. And so some of the things that he told me in the hour that we spent together, and I was able to find a 27-page transcript, which I wrote about for New York Magazine today. He told me that the coarsening of society, particularly legalized abortion, has led people to believe that life has no meaning, and that's how you get school shooters. That part is a direct quote. He also told me that he was feeling optimistic that soon Republicans would outnumber Democrats, or he said pro-life voters would outnumber pro-choice voters because, quote, pro-choice people abort their babies, and eventually, now I'm paraphrasing, eventually they would outnumber pro-choice voters. Maybe he realized that wouldn't work, and that's why he wanted to throw out the votes of people who disagreed with him, didn't vote for Donald Trump. But needless to say, at the time, it was hard to imagine that somebody like him would be second in line in the succession for presidency within 8 years.
You're absolutely right. And right, he did believe in the election that elected him, by the way. Let me play Mike Johnson in 2005 talking about same-sex marriage.
The Lawrence case opened the floodgates for same-sex marriage, or the push for it, because it recognized a fundamental right, a constitutional right, to sodomy, which had never been recognized before. This is where we're headed. This is why it's important to rein in the federal judiciary.
Irin, I'm going to come to you first, then Judd afterwards. And this is relevant because you did write the great book, The Notorious RBG. And him saying that is one thing, but I pair that with Clarence Thomas giving a concurring opinion in the Dobbs case that overturned Roe, saying that the court in future should also reconsider all of the court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, which legalized the pill, contraception, Lawrence, and Obergefell, which would mean making same-sex relationships illegal and also undoing gay marriage. So he's got at least some friends on the court, and I believe he's also friendly with Amy Coney Barrett. Your thoughts?
Well, Amy Coney Barrett certainly has been affiliated in different ways. She's spoken at events that are affiliated with the Alliance Defending Freedom, where he worked for many years. Not only was he a talking head or writing op-eds or doing panels about opposing same-sex marriage and hoping that these antique sodomy laws, in fact, that was from the state of Louisiana, his home state, the law at issue in Lawrence versus Texas, he was actually crafting briefs that helped dictate the kinds of arguments that would be taken up by the court. And so, again, they moved from the court was beginning to recognize more rights, but as his side gained more control of the Supreme Court, we saw these arguments move from the margin to the center. We saw Samuel Alito taking them up wholesale. They were also involved in Hobby Lobby, very closely involved in Hobby Lobby. They represented several of the plaintiffs, including Mike Johnson personally, seeking to undermine access to contraception.
Yeah, we are out of time. I'm going to give you a very quick last word. How dangerous is this guy?
Well, I think that one of the reasons that he got to this position is he's able to take these extreme positions and put a very kind face on it.
Right.
So I do think that poses a threat.
Yeah, he does his talk radio voice when he's saying the extreme things. Irene Carmone, Judd Legum, thank you both very much.